This is the best of our knowledge. I'm Bob Barrett. Students in the western Florida Panhandle who get sent to see the school's resource officer may get more than a meeting. They may get a snack. The School Resource Officer Food Program is the brainchild of Manna Food Pantries, a local food bank in Pensacola. I visited their headquarters and learned about the program from Manna's executive director, Dee Flaunlecker.
You know, this program started in Escambia County with the Pensacola Police Department probably about 4 years ago. And what we found was that our school resource officers were having to come out of their pockets to buy food to have in their office because they had kids who were coming in saying they were hungry or they were hangry. There were kids who were getting in trouble because they hadn't eaten. And so when we heard that the officers were having to come out of their pockets, we thought, we can do something about that.
Did they contact you? Did you contact them?
We have such a wonderful relationship with not only the Pensacola Police Department, but also the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. They do something called Donut Strike, and that's where they're raising food and funds for us during the summer. And so it was actually during Donut Strike that we had a conversation with Ph.D., and it was from that this whole School Resource Officer Food Program for Kids was born, and has helped thousands of kids. And this is one of those programs, Bob, where it's not the food is not the most important thing for us about this whole process. It's really about the relationship that the school resource officer gets to build with the student.
And it's since expanded, right?
It has. Gosh, we've been doing it, as I said, for about 4 years. We started out with Pensacola Police Department. We expanded, and the Escambia County Sheriff's Office wanted to do it as well, which was fantastic. We were in, or are in, 17 schools in Escambia County. And then this year, we actually branched out to the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. And so now we're in 19 schools in Santa Rosa County through the SRO program.
Do you deal with the schools or just with the Sheriff's Department?
Yep, so we deal actually directly with law enforcement, and what happens is that we give them boxes of food, and it's grab and go items, so it's snacky kind of stuff. It's granola bars and those kinds of things that if a student comes in and says, I'm hungry, they don't have to put it in the microwave, they can just grab it and eat it. And what we do is when the school resource officer needs more food, all they have to do is call us. We put the food together and give it to them so they can take it back to their office at the school and they'll have it readily available. The other thing that's really beautiful to me about this partnership, and this is true with PPD, with the Escambia Sheriff's Office, and also with Santa Rosa Sheriff's Office, is if a school resource officer has to make a home visit, because for whatever it may be, for whatever reason, the law enforcement officer goes there and they knock on the door of the home and someone opens the door. And while not intentionally being so, that can be kind of intimidating for the family, right? And so if when the school resource officer is there, they discover that one of the issues that the family has is with food, all they have to do is call us, the school resource officer, and say, hey, I've got a family that needs food. They get to come here and pick it up, or in the case of Santa Rosa, we've got some stored up there. And then they go back to that home. They knock on the door again. They have the same uniform on. It's the same person. They look the same, except now they have bags of food, healthy food in their arms to give that family. That is also so important to us because it helps build that relationship with that family.
And when it's done in school, this is over and above any lunch or breakfast the students may have.
It is, and as a matter of fact, what we've heard from the school resource officers is what happens with this program. In some cases, a school resource officer may be trying to get close to a child or get to know a student because maybe they're having some challenges in school, right? Maybe they get sent to the school resource officers program because they got in trouble. And so by them having food in their office, it gives that child a reason to come to their office if they're not in trouble. If they are in trouble, they hand them maybe a granola bar or whatever it may be that they have. And they find again that sometimes, in many cases, the student who got in trouble, part of the problem may be they're hungry. And so they begin calming down after they eat. Now, that's not true with every situation, but they have this food stored at the schools in their offices, and it is specifically for them to be able to use for students who, come to them and say, "Hey, I'm hungry." And in an ideal situation, we want the school resource officers to be able to have those good, positive relationships with those students. I mean, our law enforcement's amazing in our communities, and then just us being able to be a part of this, we're very humbled.
Is there any chance this could expand some more?
It's funny that you say that, because we expanded this year into Santa Rosa County, and we're pretty much saturated in Escambia and Santa Rosa's. Although if there's a school resource officer who's out there listening to this and you don't know about this program, reach out to your law enforcement department and we can certainly get you connected. I think this is a great program that could go statewide, or maybe even more so, not by us, but I think it is a good model for how to build community policing relationships, with food bank being a part of that process. And so again, we're very humbled to be able to do it.
I was going to ask, is this something that's being done elsewhere around the country?
It's not, as a matter of fact. We don't know of anyone else who's doing it. And that's one of the things that is, I think, really great about Manna. And I say this not because I'm here. It's how this organization is. We are nimble. We are very reactive to community needs, and we're also very innovative. So if we, see something like in this case, learning that school resource officers had hungry kids and they were coming out of their pocket to have to buy their food, we can do something about that, and we don't have to go through red tape, and we don't have to go through, layers and layers of people. We just make it happen.
Dee Dee Flounlacker is the executive director of Manna Food Pantries in Pensacola, Florida. Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and the Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey have been awarded a National Science Foundation grant to create a research center on financial technology and science. The Center for Research Towards Advancing Financial Technologies, or CRAFT, is expected to receive $1 million in funding in its first year, with $300,000 from the NSF annually over 5 years. The rest will be funded by industry members. The aim is to expand the center to include more schools. The best of our knowledge is Jim Levulis spoke with Aparna Gupta, a professor of quantitative finance at RPI and co-director of CRAFT.
So as the name suggests, this is a center devoted to advancing financial technologies and supporting industry in their needs for innovation around financial technologies. So that is the primary focus of this center.
And I understand that among those initial areas of focus will be cybersecurity. How might this center, which has a focus on the financial sector, as you just mentioned, differ from the work of other institutions? How will this center look at it, maybe with a different perspective?
So cybersecurity is one of the several thrusts. The scope of the center is a little bit broader than cybersecurity. Cybersecurity kind of becomes the side effect of the core dependence on digital assets, digital technologies, digitization of the very delivery of financial services. So the core emphasis of the center is going to be around how digitization and data usage, the varieties of ways by which data is transforming how financial services is getting created, is going to be the primary focus of the center around, of course, machine learning, AI, and how data combined with those computational technologies are going to transform business models as well as how customers engage with financial services. So cybersecurity happens to then be a side effect of how much people engage through cyber systems rather than the traditional model of an in-person engagement or paper-based engagement. And then that creating failures and weaknesses by which vulnerabilities emerge. So in that sense, it is a pretty broad spectrum of how technologies are transforming financial services, and cybersecurity, of course, is a part of that, and that would be the distinguishing factor.
And you talked about, business moving more into the digital sphere, and now currency, of course, is moving into the digital sphere with such as the case of Bitcoin. Is that move, that trend, opening up more vulnerabilities for the financial sector and just for the everyday individual?
Absolutely, it is. So not just creating more vulnerabilities, but also, as I was saying, creating new business models, and in general, what people would call as democratization of finance in peer-to-peer engagement, whether through blockchain systems or general peer-to-peer systems and crowdfunding models. So in any such peer-to-peer democratic system, there are many modes or new modes of vulnerabilities, because the weakest link defines how weak the system is. So that would be the very central pillar by which vulnerabilities will emerge and continue to challenge.
And what do you make of this idea of cybersecurity insurance for companies? Is that a worthwhile effort, going more towards protecting against an inevitable attack versus, just shoring up the defenses?
Cybersecurity insurance is definitely a very hot and emerging space, but I think it would have a lot of challenges, even in the sense of being able to quantify and price such risks. So essentially, being able to create economically viable products around cybersecurity insurance or cyber insurance in general. So we have, of course, engaged with individuals who support this area of development. And so it would be an area of research in enabling solution innovation for cyber insurance. So it is a very important area, but it's also a very challenging area because the threats itself are evolving, and being able to assess the risks around the threats and then designing insurance services/contracts that are economically viable is the whole spectrum of challenges. Again, very hungry of data, and of course, ability to collect industry-wide data to be able to make meaningful solutions is going to be a challenge. So that's definitely a matter of concern to study.
And now moving back to this new center between RPI and the Stevens Institute of Technology, I understand that 18 financial services organizations have pledged their support to this effort. Are you able to detail what some of those organizations are, and if so, what they will bring to the work of the center?
So yeah, there are 18, and there are more that we are in conversations with. But at this point, their formal engagement with the center is still in the works. They have a commitment, but of course, they will actually become members of the center, and that's the process that's under work. So until that is finalized, I'm not at liberty to disclose their names. But to just give a sense, they are the largest banks, very well-known consulting companies, technology companies, the largest technology companies. So really covering the spectrum of companies from finance to technology that engage, of course, with each other in creating technological progressions of the financial services sector. And the nature of their engagement, as the very definition of this kind of center, is that they would become guiding element of where the center develops its research agenda by. So these industry members of the center will form the core entity that defines or helps define the very spectrum of research projects the center will devote its resources on. So it's a very critical role the industry supporters play in of course, providing resources to the center, and then, of course, guiding how the research is conducted by the center. And then, of course, the structure is designed so that the issues that the center addresses are those that are a concern across companies. So really something that is a challenge to the entire industry, and therefore solving them would have a very broad impact by addressing challenges that the industry is contending with. So that collective community that the center will become and serve is the primary design framework of the center.
Aparna Gupta is a professor of quantitative finance at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, and the co-director of the new Center for Research Toward Advancing Financial Technologies. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Reporting for The Best of Our Knowledge, I'm Jim Levulis.
Kraft Center just had its virtual launch meeting in the last week of October. Still to come, ever wonder what Ph.D. level chemists earn? They wonder. A report on a new survey with answers next on The Best of Our Knowledge. Got any questions or comments about the best of our knowledge? Send them in. Our email address is knowledge@wamc.org. And if you'd like to listen to this or any past programs again, you can find them online at our flagship station's website. Go to wamc.org and click on the programs link. And while you're there, subscribe to the Best of Our Knowledge's podcast or download the WAMC radio app to listen on demand anytime, any place. This is the Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Bob Barrett. Doctoral-level clinical chemists have unique training backgrounds and may work in a variety of settings, including academic medical centers, reference laboratories, and the diagnostics industry. However, information regarding pay and benefits for these doctoral-level chemists is scarce. Current real-world salary data is needed to allow these professionals to effectively advocate for equal and fair compensation and benefits. A special report in the November 2021 issue of the Journal of Applied Laboratory Medicine describes the findings of a Ph.D. board-certified clinical chemist compensation survey. This survey was completed by the American Association of Clinical Chemists Society of Young Clinical Laboratorians, or CYCLE. Here to talk about the survey are two members of the AACC CYCLE Core Committee who contributed to the report. Dr. Khushbu Patel is an assistant professor of pathology at the University of Pennsylvania and the director of clinical chemistry at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And Dr. Yachna Kataria is the medical director of clinical chemistry at Boston Medical Center and an assistant professor of pathology and laboratory medicine at Boston University. Both these doctors spoke with Randy Kay on the podcast Jom Talk.
First, Dr. Patel, can you give us some background about the CYCLE Clinical Chemist Compensation Survey and how it was conducted?
Sure. So this was the fourth compensation survey launched by CYCLE, which collected data in February of 2021. Prior such surveys were conducted in 2010, 2013, and 2018. As with prior surveys, this survey was administered online, asking questions related to compensation and benefits. In the current survey, all AACC members holding doctoral degrees and residing in the United States and Canada were invited to participate. An email invitation was sent out to over 1,500 members, of which 208 responded. 113 of those respondents were ABCC certified clinical chemists residing in the U.S. This was the subgroup that we focused our compensation analysis on. However, aggregate data on all survey participants and a separate evaluation for Canadian respondents can be found in the online supplement of the manuscript.
Thank you. Next question for you, Dr. Kataria. What would you say are the major findings of the survey?
Thank you. We found that most respondents worked either in an academic hospital or healthcare system setting. We found that among the ABCC certified clinical chemists, the median compensation range was $180,000 to $189,000. The 25th percentile compensation range was $150,000 to $159,000, whereas the 75th percentile was reported to be $230,000 to $239,000. We also observed a correlation of salary with years of experience and academic rank. However, there was no apparent trend in compensation among geographical groupings, either based on region or cost of living.
All right, thank you. Now, I know that a similar compensation survey was conducted and published in JOM back in 2018. Dr. Patel, can you compare and contrast those 2018 survey findings to the 2021 survey findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So participation-wise, we had similar number of respondents across both surveys. Overall, we did see an increase in compensation with median salaries of ABCC certified U.S. respondents trending upwards after adjusting for inflation. There are a couple of key differences in the current survey and how it was conducted compared to 2018 that we would like to point out. So the first difference is that in the 2021 survey, we asked respondents to report their total compensation, whereas in the 2018 survey, the base salary and bonus or incentives were reported separately. And secondly, we also added geographical groupings based on regions of the country, in addition to groupings based on a cost of living index that was used in the 2018 survey solely. We made these changes to align our data with other sources frequently used by employers, such as the AAMC faculty survey report, to allow for direct comparison.
All right, thank you. Now, I know that other organizations such as the Association of American Medical Colleges, or AAMC, did their own survey. So how does the data from this year's AACC cycle survey compare to data from other surveys?
Yeah, so the 2020 median total compensation for Ph.D. clinical pathology assistant professors was reported to be $161,000 by the Association of American Medical Colleges, also known as the AAMC. Whereas the cycle survey, we report a slightly higher median total compensation range. If you recall, I had said 180 to 189,000 for board certified PhD assistant professors. Now, these differences may be attributable to the timing and the method of data collection. Additionally, the AACC cycle data is representative of only ABCC board certified clinical chemists, where the AAMC data also includes PhDs without the ABCC board certification. And additionally, in our survey, we did find that respondents with ABCC certification, they reported higher salaries.
Thanks, Dr. Kataria. While I have you, are there any other findings from this year's survey that you'd like to share?
Yes, absolutely. In the online version of the manuscript, you'll see supplemental data that shows you the data from the entire survey. So I definitely highly encourage interested readers to review that. And in generally speaking, we see a lot of variability in bonus structures. More specifically, bonuses could vary anywhere from none to over $100,000. Additionally, we found that 93% respondents did receive some sort of additional funding that can be applied to either travel, CE credits, books, or other scholarly activities. I think it's also important to highlight that overall, most participants self-reported that they are satisfied or very satisfied with their annual compensation.
All right, thank you. And for you, Dr. Patel, just one final question. What do you think the future will have in store for this survey, and will there be another version?
Yeah, sure. So in future surveys, we definitely hope to increase overall engagement and responses from all AACC members, including our Canadian colleagues. We do like to continually assess the impact of this initiative and whether members find this data beneficial. So in this survey, we asked some supplemental questions to probe how members were using this data. And 74% of the respondents indicated that they found the 2018 survey results either extremely valuable or very valuable. And over 50% of the respondents requested that this survey be repeated every 2 years. Therefore, we hope to continue to monitor trends in compensation and benefit over the years and be a resource for not only clinical chemists that are on the job market, but also employers looking to hire such highly trained individuals.
All right, thank you. Very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
for having us.
That was Dr. Khushbu Patel and Dr. Yashna Kataria from the American Association of Clinical Chemistry Cycle Core Committee discussing the JOM Special Report entitled The 2021 Ph.D. Board Certified Clinical Chemist Compensation Survey. They spoke on the podcast JOM Talk hosted by Randy Kay. Well, looks like Mom was right. Take a sweater and stay warm and you won't get sick. That little tidbit of parental wisdom is the topic of today's Academic Minute.
Going back to the office can be challenging. I'm Dr. Lynn Pascarella, president of the Association of American Colleges and Universities. And today on the Academic Minute, Ken McLeod, professor of systems science, explores.
With the majority of Americans now vaccinated against COVID-19, many who have been working from home over the past year or so are now heading back into their offices. Adjusting to new routines is challenging, but it can affect our health and wellness as well. As a biomedical engineer, I study how physical factors influence human health. This includes electromagnetic fields, gravitational fields, and thermal effects. My colleagues and I have shown that living or working in too cool of an environment for extended time periods can result in depressed core body temperature. Low core body temperature affects how fast we burn calories and so commonly leads to weight gain. As importantly, low core body temperature prevents your immune system from functioning efficiently, putting you at a much greater risk of succumbing to a cold, flu, or other infection. This is why changing your physical environment can substantially alter the way your body works and impact both your health and fitness. If you're gaining weight and aren't sure why, or regularly catching colds or the flu, check the thermostat where you live or work. Most offices tend to be kept near 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a reasonable temperature if you're quite active in your job, but not so reasonable if you're sitting all day long in front of a computer. There's a good reason why so many of your coworkers are always complaining of being cold. But it's not just uncomfortable, it's not healthy. The correct room temperature is where you are comfortable. Not too hot, not too cold. That's generally between 72 degrees and 81 degrees Fahrenheit at moderate humidity. But it may range as low as 65 degrees or as high as 85 degrees. If you don't have control over your thermostat, thanks to new technologies, you still have a variety of options besides wearing a coat all day long. But however you achieve it, do your best to stay comfortably warm in your workplace.
That was Ken McLeod of Binghamton University. You can find this, other segments, and more information about the professors at academicminute.org.
The Academic Minute is a production of WAMC, Northeast Public Radio, in partnership with the Association of American Colleges and Universities. That's all the time we have for this week's program. If you'd like to listen again, join us online at our flagship station's website. Go to WAMC.org and click on the programs link. While you're there, subscribe to our podcast or any of the other WAMC or National Productions podcasts. And if you have any questions or comments about the program, send them in. Our email address is knowledge@WAMC.org. And you can find us on Twitter at TBOOKnowledge. I'm Bob Barrett. Be sure to join us next time for another edition of The Best of Our Knowledge.
Bob Barrett is producer of The Best of Our Knowledge. Dr. Alan Chartock is executive producer. The Best of Our Knowledge is a production of WAMC Radio's National Productions, which is solely responsible for its content. Hear more at WAMC.org.